Hi everyone. I wanted to come on here and talk a little bit about trust because it's coming up a lot in various conversations I've been having over the last weeks and months, various sessions I've had with people, and it's something that I've had to deal with in my own life a few years ago. So I would like to talk a little bit about the different levels of trust and how we can really cultivate an inherent trust that's in ourselves, and what that trust is put into in a way that is aligned and empowering for us. And I'm going to share a little bit about my own journey around trust. Um, so yeah, we can talk about trust. Many people have their own idea about what trust means. And there's different things that we can put our trust in. So I want to go through some examples of that and talk about different advantages, disadvantages of having those, and what ultimately is the best thing to put our trust in. So when many people think initially about trust, they probably think about putting their trust in other people. Now, I'm sure you know this is a minefield in itself. How do we know that people are trustworthy? How do we know that they're not manipulating us? How do we know that they will be consistent in what they say and what they do? Well, the answer is we don't. And discerning whether to put your trust in somebody it's a minefield in itself. And so it can take, if you're really focused on that, it can take a lot of energy from you. And we can have the two extremes. There are people who don't trust anybody because they've learned in life that that's the safest way to be, because they've had experiences of trusting people and then those people have abused that trust. And then you have people who trust everybody and everything. We can call that blind trust. This is cool. It's probably just the way those people are built. And yet, to build the quality of discernment, intuiting whether to allow somebody to have control over a part of your life, or to give that control to them, is a good quality to have, obviously. And so this is putting our trust in other people. It's more about having that quality of discernment. But it's not by any means that aligned divine trust that I would like to talk about today. And so we can take it a step further and say, well, maybe I can put my trust in myself. Well, the first question to ask is then, who are you? Are you your accumulated experiences? Are you your skills and abilities? I mean, you can certainly put your trust in that. Are you the life that you've built for yourself? The house, the family, the car? And these things can all fall away in an instant. Even your skills and abilities. Brain injuries can take those things away too. And so what's the self that remains beyond all that? Well, I would say it's the presence, the witness. the qualities that come forth from that: curiosity, willpower, empathy, playfulness, these kind of things. I would say that those are the things that you can put trust in, insofar as you're prepared to be vulnerable, to be yourself, to be completely authentic. And being completely authentic, we come to a point where we realize that whatever outcome may come from that is not necessarily the outcome that you may want, and yet it has a rightness to it. It has a feeling of, yeah, okay, that was the thing that needed to happen now. Maybe it's challenging, maybe it's not, maybe it feels great. When you develop an inherent trust in your authentic expression, then the attachment to whether things go well or not, or how much pain that expression creates, falls away. And of course, that doesn't mean that we're not compassionate with ourselves and other people. It just means that we are not willing to compromise who we are in order to placate others or take the soft, safe, comfortable route, for example. So we can put our trust to a degree in that. Why not? And I would like to talk about another level of trust, which I hear quite a lot from people, and that is the trust that everything will turn out okay. Now, it sounds pretty surrendered, pretty divine, let's say. There's people who put their trust in God, and we'll come to that in a second. Putting this trust that everything will be okay. And there's people who tell themselves this daily, and because they believe it so wholeheartedly, things turn out to be pretty okay, even if they have challenges, even if hard times come up. They somehow know that things will work out in the end. Now, this is a great quality to have, and yet there's a danger to it too. There's a danger that you start to judge the outcome, that you start to perceive that the good times are the goal. That you start to fixate on that. And so there's a subtle judgment of this outcome is okay and that outcome is not. Now, this to come beyond this takes a really masterful change in orientation in our lives. Because why would we? Why would we be okay with the challenging situations? Why would we not want to put our trust that everything's going to turn out well in the end? Well, the question I would say to put to that is, well, imagine that you lose your house, your family, your car, all of those things that are giving you safety and comfort in your life. Are you still yourself then? Are you still the presence? Are you still the being? Are you still the qualities that emerge from that stillness? Now, if the answer is yes, then what difference does it make whether life is challenging or good? Actually, when you start to orientate yourself towards the soul, and the soul being a stream of consciousness which arises from the source and flows down through the body-mind and expresses through it. If you orientate yourself to that, then it's going to be about revealing that in every moment of your life. And so you start to welcome the challenges, because they show you where you might have a limitation, where you might be identified with the physical, the emotional, the mental, the parts of you which are, in a spiritual sense, illusionary, but that you may have built identity around because they're so loud in our consciousness. And so we can put our trust in that process. We can put our trust in the universal torus of life and its ability to align itself, because that is always happening. There are blockages, there are distortions that are created in that flow, and yet the torus is always seeking to realign itself. So that we can definitely put our trust in. That is definitely not going to change. And if we can align ourselves with that orientation, then we build what I would call an inherent trust. So it's not the trust that things are going to be okay. It's not the trust that you will be treated well by other people. It's not the trust that you will always have a solution to every event. It's more the trust that whatever situation you find yourself in, something about you is going to be revealed. Something that you are, and probably something that you are not. And so we can cultivate that inherent trust. Before I go on to talk about that, there's one more level to this, and that is trusting in the divine, trusting in, well, some people will call it God. If you're religious, then it may be a certain deity, or it may just be a feeling of the divine in general, of spirit, let's say. The problem with this is there's still a feeling that you're putting your trust in something outside of yourself. When I say I trust in God, when I trust in spirit, when I say that, there's a feeling like spirit or God is something outside of me which can support me and help me, right? So I'm still putting my power into something outside of me. I disempower myself in that moment. When I ask for help and support from an outside entity, I'm transmitting the message that I'm not powerful enough, that I am small in this sense. And we are powerful enough. What we are powerful enough to do in every situation is realize what we are in it and what we are not. That we are beyond the physical, the emotional, and the mental. That we are fully in this life. Maybe it reveals to us a situation where we are not fully in it. Maybe it reveals to us a situation where we're going out of body a degree, where we're not completely engaged. That can be the case too. And the danger with putting your trust in the divine, in God, in spirit, in these kind of things, is again, you're subtly sending the message that I need things to be a certain way. I need a particular outcome. I need to feel this. And this is what keeps us in limitation. It's what keeps us in identity. So just be wary of that. Now, many of you may be in contact with guides, for example. And we all have, in my opinion, in my perspective, we all have guides who are watching us, who are around us, and can support the journey to a degree. Let's talk about what that support actually means. Because as a guide, how can you support somebody without disempowering them? If you intervene in any situation, if you make the situation comfortable again for people, that's an intervention. That's disempowering people. So as a guide, the question is always, how can you support that person to reveal themselves to themselves? To reveal their own divine nature. And so your attention can be spiked towards certain things. It can be drawn to certain things which send you metaphorical messages, synchronicities, which can spike things in your subconscious, which put together a picture of what you're dealing with. Always an open question is a great way of encouraging somebody to explore something further. And so when we ask for support from, let's say, guides, it's always what we're asking for. Show me what am I missing? How can I reveal something more about myself? Before I go on to talking about cultivating an inherent trust in ourselves, where we don't have to say, well, I'm efforting now to trust in something. It's just something that's naturally a part of us. Before I talk about that, I'd like to tell a little story. It's my own journey around this. Now, there was a time when I had saved up enough money for about a year's worth of living. And I decided to quit my job and put all my effort into running my my spiritual facilitation business. And so I did. That's exactly what I did. And over time, I got completely exhausted by it because a lot of my effort was going into creating things that I thought would bring me money. And I basically had a year's worth of putting my effort into something which brought me pretty much nothing. It's been my worst year so far in terms of how much I've earned from my offerings to people. And in the meantime, I've completely changed my approach. I've completely changed my perspective towards my service to people. And so it's not a thing anymore. But at the time, it led to a kind of a mini burnout situation where I collapsed on the sofa in a heap and just said, I can't do this anymore, And I'd been told many times, when you give your attention to something, when you express yourself authentically, then the divine will meet you there and support that. And so my question was, why on earth is this not happening to me? Why am I not being supported now? Because without resources, without financial resources, I have to go back to a daily job again. So I won't be able to put so much time and energy into this anymore. And I decided to go on a little personal vision quest. It was a trip out into the mountains where I would stay for a couple of nights and meditate and fast and just see what came up. And so I made my way out there, and I had a particular place in mind. I'd never been there before, but it was recommended to me by a friend. It was like a little waterfall area that was kind of tucked out of the way that people probably wouldn't find. And so I was kind of set on making my way there, and I was tight about it. It was hot. I had a very heavy backpack with my camping equipment and all the water that I wanted to drink during that time. And I started being attacked by a swarm of horseflies. There was about 30 of them flying around me, which obviously brought up a lot of tension in me and increased my desire to get to where I wanted to get to. Now, this tension, this triggering, this increased desire to get to the goal actually brought about the opposite scenario that I wanted, which was I kind of came off the path and got lost. I couldn't find this place anymore. And so I decided to set up camp somewhere. And after I'd set up camp, I finally sat down and thought, well, okay, I surrender to this now. And I accept this moment and what it's taught me. I was reflecting on what these things have taught me. It's all part of the vision quest itself, of course. And in that moment, I heard this car engine. Usually you wouldn't hear motorized vehicle engines in this part. You're kind of halfway up a mountain surrounded by forests. And this big 4x4 came up, and this guy got out. He was a park ranger, essentially. Well, the equivalent of that we have here in Austria. And he said, you can't camp here because, in Austria it's not actually allowed to wild camp. You have to camp in designated camping sites. And so he said, you got to pack up your tent, I'll drive you down. And he was going to recommend me a campsite like 10 kilometers away from the beginning of the trek that I'd made. And it felt like a complete failure, I guess, in the quest. I would have to start again in the morning, and I was so far away, and I didn't want to be in a campsite of normal people who could be talking late into the night or drinking or these kind of things. And I think he took pity on me a little bit, because he dropped me off at a little place just beside the car park, which usually wouldn't have been allowed to park in, but he said, well, it's okay for this night. And so I camped there, and it was a very peaceful night. And so I got up in the morning, packed up my tent, and resolved to to go again, except this time I wouldn't be so fixed on an outcome. And I decided to just follow the flow, and something stopped me right at the entrance of the car park. And this old guy, parked up and got out of the car, and he said something to me in an Austrian dialect, which sounded to me like, "It seems like you're waiting for yourself." It's probably something else that he said, but that's what it sounded like to me. And we decided to walk together, and he was telling me about his faith in God. He was a very Christian guy, and all the teachings around that. And I was disagreeing with some of the things he said and putting forth my own perspective. And despite the fact that we had very different views on the divine and on certain aspects of life, it was a wonderfully uplifting conversation. And we parted ways at some point further down the track, and the guy burst into tears because he said, "Thank you so much for just listening and being open and receiving of what I had to say." So it felt like this, can we say, divinely orchestrated moment, like somehow we were meant to meet. And I was quite uplifted going forwards, and it turned out the flow did actually then take me to where I originally wanted to go the previous day, and I ended up in this waterfall, and there were really crazy storms that night, and it was quite scary actually. And what I took away from the whole experience was that the divine is not there to give me what I want. It's there to reflect certain things to me that I can learn from. And that's exactly what I got from the experience. I learned so much through it. And it completely changed my orientation. It wasn't any more about what I could get from the experience, or about certain outcomes that I wanted to have come into my life. It was more about how I could express authentically and follow the flow, and what that could teach about me. Whether it gave me something that I wanted, whether it gave me something that was very challenging and painful, I knew that it was all there for me, that these things were not being done to me, but rather for me. That was the big lesson. The funny thing is that I knew all of this beforehand, theoretically. And it took a kind of a breaking down, building up again, in order to really start integrating and embodying it. So that's my story around it. And maybe it takes something like that for you too. If you are really yearning for that. So how can we cultivate this inherent trust? Not in other people, not in yourself, not in a God or the divine, but rather that the universal torus of life will always figure out a way to align itself in yourself. And that you will always find an authentic way of being through that. Well, first of all, it's about changing your orientation, and that's what I've been talking about the whole time. The soul is not about being in certain situations or doing certain things. It's always about what it can reveal about itself. And so it comes to a point where you start to welcome the challenges. There's like a rubbing of hands together moment, even though things are kind of painful on many levels, because you know that there's a breakthrough moment coming from it. You know that it's going to reveal something more about yourself. There's going to be an expansion of consciousness on the other side of it or through it. Another practice that can really help with this is what I would call freewheeling. And this is all about taking yourself off in moments that you have during the day without a set goal, without a set outcome in mind, without a set destination or path, and just seeing where the flow takes you and what it reflects to you. And this really builds up that that divine trust, that inherent trust that authentic expression always leads to the right outcome. I would say that's all I have to say on the subject. So if you are interested in this and have any questions, if you want to share your own experience, then get in contact. My contact details are below, so I would love to hear from you. Wishing you all great explorations.